Eric Van Tassell earned his BA in theater from Hope College in 2006. When he started undergrad, his focus was acting, but his experiences there expanded his interest to directing and lighting. Uncertain whether he would pursue graduate school for theology, directing, or lighting design, he spent nearly the next decade in Chicago working with a variety of small theater companies and holding assorted day jobs, including the 3 years of fundraising for Steppenwolf Theater Company to support himself financially. Having solidified his passion for lighting design, he earned his Master's of Fine Arts in Lighting Design and Technology at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign in 2018. Knowing that he hoped to teach at a small liberal arts college, similar to where he went to undergrad, and knowing that schools of that size typically have a single professor covering both lighting and sound design, he diversified his studies in graduate school to better prepare himself to instruct sound students as well. During graduate school, Eric found himself back on the campus of Hope College as the production manager for Hope Summer Repertory Theater during 2017 and 2018. Eric then spent a year in the Villages in Florida, where he worked for this Sharon L. Morse Performing Arts Center as their lighting director, hosting world-renowned performers, including classic rock bands, dance companies, and Broadway touring companies. He returned to Hope College once again in the fall of 2019 to join the faculty of the dance and theater departments. Thank you, Eric.
Right. So good morning, everybody. One of the things that's fun about teaching a HASP class at 9:30 in the morning is that y'all are more alert than a bunch of theater students at 9:30 in the morning. Dance students at 9:30 in the morning are actually, they've been going for an hour and they're moving and they're in physical classes at that time. But theater students at 9:30 in the morning, I no longer teach a 9 a.m. theater class, but I have taught 9 a.m. theater classes, and it's rough because a bunch of them were at rehearsal with me till 10 o'clock the night before, and then are doing homework, and then they're going to bed, and then they get up and my dad joke humor doesn't play for 20-year-olds that are half asleep. They like it at 2 p.m. They think it's great. But at 9:30, it's rough. So come along with me. I'm excited that even just that good morning was enthusiastic. I appreciate it. So yes, as mentioned, my name is Eric Van Tassell. I am this assistant professor of dance and theater at Hope College. I teach lighting and sound design, primarily lighting, but as well as sound as well. And we'll be focused on lighting today, but sound may come up. I'm drinking tea up here. I have two little kids, and we're gonna talk about them in a minute too. A cold went through our house, as it does when you have little kids. I am perfectly healthy. I have been to the doctor. They say that I'm healthy. They say my lungs are clear. They say I'm fine. I just keep coughing for no reason at all. I don't think it will happen because it's gotten better. But if I go into a coughing fit, you're all okay. It's going to be fine. And I'll do my best to mute the mic or whatever so that we aren't all blasted by me hacking up the excess from the 2 weeks ago. So again, now that I've said that, it won't happen. But if I didn't say it, then I obviously would have, right? So wonderful. So yes, as mentioned, I am in my 6th year at Hope College. If you are somebody who's dialed in on tenure processes, you might say, 6th year, you're going up for tenure if you're on a tenure track path. I would be, except that a little thing called COVID happened, and I took a 1-year extension. So I'm on a 7-year plan rather than a 6-year plan. So a year from now, I'll be submitting materials and hoping for that little tenure bump. Yeah, my wife Katie and I moved to Holland in 2019. When we moved here, we were she was 8 months pregnant with our son Grayson, and so 3 weeks before I started things for the fall of my first year of teaching, we welcomed Grayson to the world, and then our families completed 3 years later when our daughter Cassie was born. There we go. So there we all are. I'm a big Red Wings fan, and I've forced them all to come along with me. So yeah, it's that's our little family here. So this talk is an interesting the origins of this. Let's talk about the origins of where this speech came from. I've taught a HASP class before a couple years ago, and we did a like from the page to the stage thing on how we did 3 sessions. We did sort of how backstage at a theater in general, and then we did how a production goes from script to stage, full process, and then we did lighting design specific. How does my work fit into that larger thing? So that was a fun sequence. This session comes from a thing called Continuum. So Hope College does a couple of interesting things for new faculty and pre-tenured faculty. When you first arrive, they put you through a thing called Initium, which is sort of fake Latin for initiation. And it's your group of faculty cohort, the folks that have arrived as new faculty with you that year, and we all go through some training together, and it's a bonding experience, and it's great. And then the next sort of step that you can opt in on and choose to do is Continuum, which is again sort of pseudo Latin for continuation. And it's an interdivisional cohort of pre-tenure faculty members who meet during the summer to discuss theological perspectives on the vocation of scholarship, the current state of theological reflection, and engagement in their research fields and disciplines, and the ecumenical continuum of theological perspectives through which our colleagues, both at Hope College and within higher education, approach their own scholarship. That's a run-on sentence. Yeah. The goal through this program and these lectures is to build a community committed to an ongoing conversation about faith, vocation, and scholarship. So as a part of that process, you spend a week ruminating on your research and how your research and your faith and your calling and your vocation are all connected. And at the end of that, sometime during the following year, you give a little presentation. I gave a little presentation in the fall of 2022. So that presentation was seen by a friend of mine who works at Hope Church and said, actually, you should do that as part of our adult education on a Sunday morning. And I said, okay. And I did that. And then somebody there saw that and said, you should do that as a part of HASP. And I said, okay. So here's this. So this has taken a few permutations, but the basis of where this came from was an exploration of my my path to where I am now professionally and how my faith and my scholarship connect. So that's where we are. So that leads us to our structure for today. We'll talk a little bit about upbringing, background, and faith foundation, sort of where I came from. We'll talk about how I got interested specifically in lighting design, and then my growth as a designer and a person of faith and how those happened in parallel. And then my current research and faith connection. My research, so in sometimes the arts in academia are a little bit of a square peg round hole situation. So when somebody who teaches in the sciences talks about their research, they're talking about I don't know, splitting the atom. They're not talking about splitting the atom. That not on Hope College's campus anyway. Their research is building a better mousetrap. Their research is understanding the nuances of the scientific world. Perhaps their research is writing a book. Perhaps their research is writing a book on philosophy or history or religion or whatever the case might be. For me, my research in the arts is also called creative works. So my research could look like writing a book. chair of the dance department, Matt Farmer, has a book that's being released next week. It's very exciting, on improvisational dance. So it's a very exciting book that he's got coming out. But it doesn't have to look like publishing a book. It could look like making theatrical performances, making art pieces, making dance pieces, whatever the case might be. So for me, my research is creative works. So whatever show I'm working on currently is part of my research. So when I did this talk originally, at that time, our current show that we were working on, my current research at the time, was a play called Silent Sky. Silent Sky is a play by Lauren Gunderson, which has some nice connections between faith and science. It follows the story, true story, of a 19th century astronomer named Henrietta Leavitt, who ultimately figured out the basis for how we are able to measure the distance between stars and planets and nebula and heavenly bodies. She figured out that by measuring the pulsing of light of these things observable via telescopes, we could extrapolate that to a measure of distance. Henrietta, the main character of the play, is sort of juxtaposed to her sister. Their father is a minister back home in Wisconsin, and Henrietta has headed off to Harvard, where there's a very fancy telescope that the men will use and she doesn't get to use, but she's close to it. Henrietta is connected more with the science side of the observable world, and her sister is connected more with the faith side of the observable world. And Henrietta, the main character, she pushes against faith, insisting that it isn't the end all be all, but she doesn't reject it. And I think that I see a kindred spirit in Henrietta in some ways, and we'll talk a little bit about that. This line is the I think it is the opening line, one of the opening lines. It's in the opening monologue of Silent Sky. Heaven's up there, they say. Pearly clouds, pearly gates, they say. They don't know much about astronomy, I say. The science of light on high, of all that is far off and lonely and stuck in the deepest dark of space. Dark, but for billions and billions of exceptions. And I insist on the exceptional. It's a beautiful bit of writing. Lauren Gunderson's a fantastic playwright. So this lecture is titled Let There Be Light. Let's borrow another biblical phrase. In the beginning. Different family grouping rather than me as patriarch, me as little kiddo. So my folks, Tom and Wendy Van Tassell, Wendy formerly Greenwood, when they would have graduated from Hope College in 1977. There's Dad sporting the very cool Hope College Letterman jacket there. Dad ran cross country and played some soccer once the soccer team pulled him away from the cross country team. My folks were always connected to the arts. They were active in NYCRC and choirs and theater as students in a little bit. They studied communications and history, and I think philosophy. I can never remember what Dad studied. When they left Hope College, Dad went to graduate school at Michigan State, and then eventually, when they were living in California, where my sister and I were both born, my dad started going to seminary and then transferred to Yale Divinity School. So we moved to Connecticut when I was 4 years old. There, my dad finished his Master's of Divinity from Yale Div. And then we ended up in Lansing, Michigan at a congregational church there. While we were there, my mom started commuting over once a week to Western Theological Seminary here in town. And so then she was ordained as well. And at the time, we had 3 pastors at church, a head pastor. My dad was the associate, and then my mom was part-time as the assistant pastor. And then they felt the calling to find a church of their own, so they moved to a congregational church in a small town called Spencer, Iowa, which you may have seen on the news this summer had some horrible flooding that made the national headlines. So they co-pastored the congregational church in Spencer, Iowa for 23 years and retired in 2020, not due to the COVID, previously planned prior to COVID, and moved to town. So they're in town now. My sister Laura with the cool bob there and the very big chunky glasses, and in the picture where I've got the pants that are too short and the white socks with the loafers. She used to work for a theater company doing fundraising in Philadelphia. Now she works for Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia, the original Ronald McDonald House, doing fundraising there. And her husband is also a theater artist. And so we have a lot of fun artistic conversations. But it's interesting that both my sister Laura and I ended up in fields where we take care of other people and we tell stories to other people, whether telling people stories for the purpose of fundraising or telling people stories for the purpose of entertainment and education. We are invested in the people around us in a way that I think is a lovely extrapolation of our parents, who are educators and theologians and artists. The importance of the arts in our family was prevalent throughout our upbringing. The very nature of music being a huge part of our lives, that we sang around a piano together, we learned a piano, we sang campfires, and we sang at church camp, and we sang at in all kinds of ways. We were involved in community theater. We were involved in the theater at church. We were involved in theater at the high school. We were encouraged to paint and draw and sketch and make a mess. All things that now, as a parent, I think are challenging to encourage, because it means there's a mess in the house, and it stresses me out sometimes. That foundation allowed us to engage with art. And then as we got older, and also reading as well, started to dovetail with theological. And that's partially just because our parents did what they did for a living. Eventually, I made my way to Hope College. So the group of buddies of mine in the basement of Wyckoff Hall on the top left there. 12th Street Harmony, which was the men's a cappella group at the time that I think is dormant at the moment, is singing for the national anthem there, I think probably before a Hope Calvin game. We figured out that if we got to sing the national anthem for Hope Calvin games, that we didn't have to wait in line to get a ticket. We could just get in. And the coach liked us, so that worked out great for us. And these are some, all of these are photos from my freshman year at college. And I came to Hope as an actor, as so many students that I see come to Hope College do. I'm the fellow with the long hair in most of these photos. I came in as an actor, and while I was working in the theater department as an actor and studying and taking every single class that I could, I was a theater major with no minor, no double major. So I could dabble in other things. I could try other things, but I never had the pressure of trying to fill my schedule with other stuff. I could take everything in the theater department that I wanted. I took intro to philosophy, and the prof came to me halfway through the semester. He said, "You're good at this. Do you like this?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's your major?" I said, "Theater." He says, "Do you have a minor?" I said, "No." "Philosophy is the smallest minor. We can get you a minor real fast, like 2 semesters. We can get you a minor." I was like, "No, I'm good. Thanks." I took an intro to psych class, and she said, "You're good at this. Do you like this?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "What's your major?" I said, "Theater." "Do you have a minor?" I said, "No." "Want a minor in psychology?" "No." "I really like your class. I really like learning all of it. It's making me a better artist. It's making me a better better person. But I'm going to focus on the thing that I'm excited about and that I can make a difference in, I think." But while I was acting, I was also exposed to things that I hadn't had any experience with before. In high school, I had helped build scenery, put a platform together. Power tools are fun, cool. Simple paint job, easy though. But I'd never touched a light. In high school, I'd never done anything electrical. But I was discovered that the theater department will pay students at Hope College to work in the light crew and the scene shop and the costume shop. I said, wait a minute, you'll pay me to be in this building that I already like with people I already like, learning a skill that I don't know? Why have I not been doing that already? And so from my sophomore year on, I started working in the light crew. By the time I was a senior, I was co-designing. The piece in the photo on the bottom left here, I co-directed with a faculty member. This picture in the top center, I co-designed the lights with a faculty member. And the image on the bottom right there, I designed the lights for a student-produced play. I designed lights for several student-produced shows. I directed several student-produced shows. By the time I graduated from Hope, I would have told you I was a director who did lighting design because he was good at it. I wasn't necessarily passionate about lighting. I was passionate about directing. I was passionate about storytelling. And I wasn't passionate about acting anymore. Partially because it's too small. I'm not as interested in one character's arc. I'm interested in the larger story. So I moved to Chicago. And when I moved to Chicago, the plan was, actually, maybe let's not do theater for a little while. I would have told you that it was because I was burned out. The real reason was because of a girl. I thought that my girlfriend at the time, who was a year younger than me, I thought she wanted the dream more, wanted to be an actor. And so I'll do the heroic thing and fall on my sword and I'll get a real job and I'll support the two of us. And when she graduates, she'll join me in Chicago and everything will work out great. And that didn't work for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that I was sacrificing my own dreams and visions for somebody else. We're not together anymore. So I got day jobs that would allow me to spend some time doing theater, and I worked a lot. I designed a lot of shows. I worked with small theater companies, and worked my way up to some larger theater companies. I started as a lighting designer in Chicago, partially because even though I was more excited about directing, I wasn't sure how to get a directing job. It's tricky to start directing without starting your own theater company. Because I can come to you and I can show you photos of my lighting design, but how do I show you that I'm a good director? I directed in college. Trust me, it was great. It's a little challenging. So instead, the answer is actually that you should assistant direct and apply for some things at some larger organizations. But I didn't know that. But I figured if I was a lighting designer, I would get in the room and people would trust me. They'd start to realize that I was good in the room, that I was knowledgeable, and then they'd eventually let me direct. And that worked, except that right around when I started to get jobs directing, including directing a Klingon Christmas Carol on the top right there, which is a Christmas Carol translated completely into Klingon, performed in Klingon with English super titles like you're at the opera. Right around that time is when I started to realize, well, maybe I'm not a director who does lighting because he's good at it. Maybe I'm a lighting designer who occasionally directs. And that was another 2 years of rumination. Of what does that mean? How do I do that? Because around that same time, there was also a diversion. What if I should study theology? Here's me as Jesus. Not to have delusions of grandeur or anything. I met my now wife. I started attending her church in the suburbs. And I had been there I started attending with them around Christmas or January, and by April that year for Easter, I was playing Jesus in the Maundy Thursday service. I think I got cast just because I came with my own hair and beard. I think that was my main qualification. I was also continuing to be active. I was raised in the Congregational Church, specifically the National Association of Congregational Christian Churches. Which is a group that when the UCC Church, the United Church of Christ, was formed, which was congregational churches and I think Reformed and one other one. maybe Episcopal. When they all came together, there was a group of congregational churches that was like, that loose association of churches is too structured. We want to be a more loosely association of congregational churches. And that's where I grew up, is the National Association of Congregational Christian Churches. The National Association of Pilgrim Fellowship and the Heritage of Pilgrim Endeavor, HOPE. HOPE is very prevalent in my life, are the two youth groups in that organization, NAPF being the high school group and HOPE being the group that's completed high school through age 26. I was president of that national organization twice, including a retreat in Alaska, which is what that graphic is from. That around that time, I'm a leader. I'm having a leadership role in a national church organization. I'm dissatisfied with the type of work that one theater company I've been working with is doing. I've always been curious about this theology thing. They tried to get me to study philosophy and psych in college. My parents are both ministers. Should I just, maybe theater's done with. Maybe I'm done. Maybe I'll go do some study theology. And right when I was having, I started actually researching schools. I visited seminaries. I started starting to fill out applications. And right around that time, I got an opportunity to work with a different theater company, and actually the company where I met my wife. And I had an opportunity to direct. I had an opportunity to design for somebody else, and I worked on that Klingon show. And suddenly it felt like, okay, maybe theater isn't done with me. Maybe if we want to talk about vocation, if we want to talk about calling, maybe I'm not done. Call that a religious experience if you like. For me, I can't decide if it was or wasn't, whether that's the hand of God or just coincidence. But okay, maybe theater's not done with me. Okay, so if it's not directing, it's actually lighting design. How do I stop having a day job? A friend of mine said, right now you have a job where you have a job that pays your bills and you do theater on the side. You have a Bruce Wayne job and you have a Batman job. You want to be Batman full time. It's like, I do want to be Batman full time. How do I get to be Batman full time? That sounds good. So for me, the answer was I needed to go to graduate school. So I decided to sit back and say, okay, let there be light. Stop fighting it and let the thing that I've been doing with so much of my time be the thing that I'm going to do. So for me, I needed to go to graduate school. Coincidentally, the University of Illinois has lovely Hope College colors that work very nicely together. In fact, the H and the I is a very friendly hello. So why go to graduate school? For me, a few reasons. One was to fill in the gaps of my knowledge, specifically computer-aided drafting and moving lights that are able to be moved on their own. Those are things that we didn't have as technology when I was a student in undergrad. Networking is a huge part of graduate school. It just comes with connections. And then lastly, the three little letters, MFA, which meant that someday I could teach at a small liberal arts college, like where I went to undergrad, maybe. That all worked out okay. While I was at the University of Illinois, I learned a lot of things. But one of the things that was interesting was that I was suddenly, in the same way that I had been in Chicago, the juxtaposition of my faith and my art in both my Chicago theater community and in my graduate school community was profound. In many faith communities, I have a pretty liberal approach to theology. I have a pretty open, accepting, and some people might clash with that because they might say it's too lenient. And the flip side of that is when I'm in many theater communities, I'm the most devout conservative person in the room, right? It's all a spectrum. So I have friends who when we're on a Zoom call and somebody says something that this is disparaging towards the religion and they say, sorry, Eric. And I'm like, no, it's okay. It works for me. It doesn't have to work for you. It's okay. That dichotomy of then being on Hope College's campus, and I might say something, and Hope actually has evolved over the years and has is open to a lot of different faith traditions and some dialogue. That's one of the things I love about Hope College, is that dialogue is present. And that spectrum here, I'm going to be further on the left of that spectrum, on the we call it progressive, if you want, call hedonistic if you'd like it the other way, of what my interpretation of faith is. In one room, I'm the most devout prude in the room, and in the other room, I'm a crazy heathen. Okay. That could sound lonely at the University of Illinois. That could sound lonely, but instead, it actually gave me a really solid foundation of who I was. That I am, created a really profound connection, I think, with my faith, really profound connection with God, because this is how I have to make this work for me. Even the schedule of the lighting program in graduate school, we had Saturdays off unless we were in rehearsal. We had Saturdays off, but Sundays we worked a 10-hour shift on Sundays, which meant I didn't go to church on Sunday morning because I was going to be working from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And so I wasn't interested in spending the first few hours of my day going to church. For those 3 years, my faith and my wife's faith was private. It was private in my work life. It was private in my public life. It was private in my church attendance life. But it was no less profound and real. And that was tricky to sort of navigate that. And ultimately, I find the theological in the theatrical, and the theatrical in the theological. And that's what I was raised to do. It goes along with my upbringing and my training at Hope College. When my family went to watch a movie as a family, we in the car ride home, it was never just watching a movie. It was, all right, so what was that about? Like we had English major conversations about movies that we went to. We were looking for allegory. We're having a discussion of whether that allegory that we saw was intended by the filmmaker, or whether we were reading into that. Even if we're reading into it, it still has value. It still touches us. When I came to Hope College, Hope is a place where the arts are prevalent and are prominent and are really held in high regard, and can push the envelope of what dialogue is able to be engaged with. And that can be uncomfortable, and it can be messy, and it can be scary, and it can be really profound. And we find the theological in all of those things at Hope College. We have a discussion about those things in some cases. My recently retired colleague in the theater department, Dinah Robbins, is fond of saying, I think my God understands theater. And that resonates with me. Also at the University of Illinois, I got to light a lot of dance. Dance is a wonderful exploration of art, and lighting in interacting with it is a joy. It's in some ways it's liberating compared to theater, because I don't have to light faces so much. I don't have to worry about understanding words people say. So I just get to work with form and idea and theme and story, and a different way of exploring story. In some ways, it is a more pure act of creation, I think, and in some ways feels more biblical. I got some nice recognition in grad school. These are all pictures from a piece called "Where We're Going," which was a dance piece choreographed by a student at the University of Illinois, an undergraduate student, that was selected at the American College Dance Festival to be taken to the National Festival at the Kennedy Center. So that's where my lighting design was seen at the Kennedy Center. Also, this is the second time a little plastic guy has appeared on screen, that little Lego man in the upper left and in the upper right, I suppose. He's there twice. This is Lego Eric. I'm regular Eric. This is Lego Eric. Whenever possible, we are dressed as similarly as possible. He lives in my pocket. I forgot to change his outfit from yesterday, when I was wearing a blue sweater. Today, I'm wearing a white sweater, so it's not the same. But y'all get to get on my. This is what I do for my Instagram. Instead of taking selfies everywhere, because that's obnoxious, instead, I take pictures of this guy, and it's a fun way to chronicle what's going on in my life. So You'll all be fuzzy in the background. Don't worry about it. He's in focus. You aren't. All's well. Um, so yeah. While in grad school, I got reconnected with Hope College in the summer of 2017, 2018. I worked for Hope Repertory Theater as their production manager and also designed lights on one show each summer. And then actually in the summer of 2019 was supposed to come back just to design one show, except I got hired to work in the fall. And so then when I came back, we just stayed. But I had worked, as mentioned in our intro, at the Sharon L. Morse Performing Arts Center in the Villages, Florida. How many people in this room have heard of the Villages in Florida? It's a bigger group in this room that has heard about it than in my other teaching environments. Yeah. The Villages is a bizarre, cool place. It is both a city and a business in a very 1984 kind of way. It is 120,000 retirees, all living in a series of retirement villages, hence the name, the Villages. And they are very cool, often very wealthy retirees who are ready to live out the dream portion of their life, and they are gonna it's where dreams come true. It's like this group of people are active, and they want to go to the theater every night. They want to go to the bar. They want to go to the golf course. There are 3, I think now 4 town squares that have open air cash bar and entertainment every single night of the year from 4 to 10 p.m. And on one of those town squares is the Sharon L. Morse Performing Arts Center, which is a former, they actually, years ago, they built a non-denominational church. That church is now the lobby, and then they built a 1,000-seat Performing Arts Center on the side of it. And so I was the lighting director there. So all those shows listed on the left, those are all shows that busking is what you call when you live mix lighting. So somebody walks in the door and says, hi, yeah, we're Charlie Daniels band. Here's the set list. Stay away from green. See you at the end. And I do the lights. Actually, Charlie Daniels band was a little more specific, and they usually travel with their own lighting designer. And he couldn't be there because he had an eye infection, and they were a little worried that I was doing it. And afterwards, they were thrilled. Some very nice kudos. But yeah, like here comes the Righteous Brothers. Pretty cool. It was a fun job. And then all the shows on the right are folks that came through that I was more facilitating their existing lighting. But yeah, it was a wonderful place to work, a huge treat, a wonderful opportunity. I loved that job. The only things I didn't like about that job were that it was in Florida, and that I didn't get to teach because I really like teaching. And when a job opened up at Hope College, I thought, well, this timing is unfortunate. We've only been down here less than a year. We've just gotten pregnant. We thought we'd maybe down here 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. I have no idea. This is a good job. But this is a tenure track position at Hope College that's probably going to only open up once in my adult career. I guess I at least have to try. The worst I can do is if I get offered the job, I can decide this doesn't work for me. I can decline. But I went for it and got it. And so we moved here in the fall of 2019. And here I've gotten to do all kinds of wonderful things with the theater and dance departments. Sometimes when you fill out sort of essays and applications for Hope College, they ask you about how you will include your faith in your teaching. There are folks on campus. I have a friend who's an economics professor. He starts every class period, he reads a piece of scripture. They don't discuss it. It's not a religion class, it's an economics class. But he reads a piece of scripture, and then they get into macroeconomics or whatever. I don't do that. But my work is tied to my faith through the beauty of observation. Much of my faith is caught up in the glory of God's creation and all of its scientific wonder. When I ask a student to observe the world around them, it's because I need them to see what's around them so that they can then take that and figure out how to put it on stage, how to put that exact thing or something that represents that exact thing, or how to take something that isn't reality and put that on stage. You need to see the world around you before you can put something that is not the world around you on stage. You need to be able to observe how the world around us, how light impacts how I feel about the room, how light impacts my emotions, how light impacts all these things, how darkness impacts all of those things. So when I ask a student to observe the way light plays across the grass having descended through the trees, for some students, that's going to be a religious experience. That sounds grand and overblown. But I don't think it is. I think that that's true. I think for some students, and I think it's true for me, that not every single time, I'm not walking around constantly overcome by the glory of God. I think that would be exhausting. I don't think I could function. But there are times when, oh, look at the way that light just peeks through that window and highlights just the edge of that wall. Well, that's cool. Okay, well, how does that work? How's the science of that work? Oh, there's refraction there. That's being bent. That's why the color changes. Oh, that's why that's happening there. That's pretty neat. And there's science in that, and there's art in that, and there's faith in that for me. One of the joys of my creative works, of my research, is that there is always a new show to solve. There's always a new problem. There's always a new design. There's always a new challenge. There's always a new story to tell. There's always another story. Whether that be a dance piece or a theater piece, there's always something else for me to tell. And that can be true for whether those shows are on campus here at Hope College, where we engage with faith deliberately, or whether they are off campus. I do a lot of work with professional theaters elsewhere in the state. One of the main ones I've worked with is Meadowbrook Theater over near Detroit. They're one of the top equity theaters in the state. Equity meaning the actors union. They're one of the higher budgeted theater companies in the state of Michigan. I'll be designing Footloose for them in January. It's very exciting. And there, we don't engage with faith in an active way, but still it's for me. I'm still taking something from the observable world that is beautiful and grand or strange and scary, and I'm putting a version of that on stage. That will always be connected to my faith. That research will always be connected to my work. Sometimes that work ends up being something that is actually explicitly faith related or faith adjacent. This is from a dance concert that was completely virtual. This was the dance department celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. Our annual faculty choreographed concert, we sometimes call Dance X, is dance and then whatever year that we're doing it. So last year was Dance 50 for the 50th anniversary of the department. This year in February, March, spring semester, it'll be Dance 51. So Dance 47 was in the winter of 2021 when we were in the midst of a pandemic and our dancers were masked and our audiences were virtual. And so we filmed this completely without an audience and edited it in post and then have this beautiful piece to show. We won't watch the entire concert. That would be an hour and a half. That'd be great. And I'd love to discuss it with you, but we won't do that. And I'm not even going to show you one whole dance piece. I'm going to show you the final section of a dance piece. I think it is the final one of the, if it's not the final piece of the concert, it is near the end. This was a piece called To the Moon, as in like, I will love you to the moon. Back. Choreographed by guest choreographer Tracy Dunbar for his grandmother, Barbara C. Walker, after she had recently deceased. he created this piece, and rehearsal director was Matt Farmore, costume design by Darlene Veenstra. It is about the 5 stages of grief. I'm going to only show you the 5th stage. So you'll see that the folks who are dancing, they're all in pretty uniform sort of leotard tunic combos, all wearing the same color, except for you'll see one that has a black sash. That person was the bargaining part of the story. The person has a red sash was for anger. The person has a green sash was for denial. The person had a blue sash was for depression. And we will be spending primarily with the person with the white sash for acceptance. As you watch this, the music is stunning. The dance is glorious. And normally, that's what you would watch. The normal thing for an audience to watch. The lighting happens, but you aren't deliberately paying attention to it. That's good. That means I'm doing my job, actually. I'm enhancing the work that you're seeing. I'm not asking you to normally watch the lighting. But today, I'm going to ask you to watch the lighting. Try to pay attention to how the lighting impacts the dance and how the lighting impacts your reaction internally, in your head, in your heart, to what you're seeing on screen. I'm going to hit play here, and then I have to scrub ahead to the right place. So,
Good evening.
hi, Matt. That's Matt Farmer, our chair of the dance department, introducing the concert. And here we are, 14 minutes and 40. Yeah, we can put the lights down. We can do whatever makes sense here. We'll think we'll get the very tail end of somebody walking off stage from the previous thing. And I'm going to turn up the volume over here, which is here. Mic controls, mic 1. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, here we go. If it's too loud, I'll pull it down. And then The next one's a cool piece too, but we won't watch that. Yeah. Question. Did we use live music? No. We didn't use live music for that. That's a recording of a famous choir that I do not remember. Yeah, there is one male in that group, a very talented dancer. He actually was featured in the bargaining scene as sort of a partner to the young lady who was she needed someone to bargain with. Yeah, it's a lovely piece. It's like I say, it's like a 20-minute piece if you watch the whole thing. Maybe in 25 minutes. It's yeah, please. Don't remember. I apologize. Um, might be able to get it for you afterwards, actually. Actually, you know what? Hang on. Let's see here. If we skip to the credits, and we're just gonna hit play here. No, so this is the no, that's these are the I think these should be in order. And so we're gonna get past one and we're gonna get to yeah. Oh, no. So they're not in order. Of course they're not in order. Grumble, 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 grumble. This is my response to that. There we go. I think technically it still is. It shouldn't be because I don't think we have the rights to have it. But if you knew where the super secret link was, you could probably get it. But yeah, it's a gorgeous piece. So that piece, let's just pop up that piece is an example of that is a piece about grief. That is not explicitly, inherently about faith, but it is for me. I think Tracy, that choreographer, I don't know that he would say that it was explicitly about faith for him, but I know it was for his grandmother. She was a person of faith, and so when he's creating this for her memory, it is about faith. And my work enhances the work of the choreographer, and so does the music, and so does everything else. Lighting can be a pretty profound thing as an element of a piece of art. I'll advance without. Nope, don't do that. Okay, cool. So back to Silent Sky. This is as I mentioned when I first did this lecture, my current research at the time was this play, Silent Sky. This is from the end of the play, when suddenly she has gotten to look through this incredible telescope that she has been wanting to look through. And we've made stars over the entire theater, from little pixels of LED lights to things projected on the walls to light projected on the walls to all kinds of things. So Henrietta Leavitt figured out that by measuring the pulsing of light, of these observable things through telescopes, that we could extrapolate that into measures of distance. And the play, as I mentioned before, has frequent interactions between Henrietta and her sister Margie, who's more connected with her faith, and their minister father. So that the contrast between these two women and their approach to the world, and their approach to what feeds their soul, I think, is one of the themes. Near the end of the play, they have a conversation. Henrietta says, something like souls. I just know that you worry about that sort of thing. And I don't want you to think that I don't believe in anything. I do. Just a different kind of faith in grand observation. And Margie says, which is comforting, but not a faith that she understands. Henrietta says, which is nimble. And that is comforting. My heaven is a cosmos deep in a gorgeous void. Forgive me, I tear up about this. This show was a profound experience for me. Sitting in technical rehearsals for Silent Sky. Tech rehearsals are when we take all of the lighting and sound and projections and all of the things that we need to add to the show. And we have basically a weekend to slam that into what they've been doing in rehearsal for 6 weeks. They've had 6 weeks to get all the acting good. And then we show up and have a weekend to do all the things that we had theories and grand plans about and make it look good on stage. So those tech rehearsals are intense and fun, and I love it. And sitting in tech rehearsal for Silent Sky in the fall of 2022, I had a realization. Without thinking, I said out loud something to the effect of, I get to do my favorite thing today. And then I processed that. Like I spoke it and then processed it afterwards. That was a thing I just said. And I realized that that is true. This is my favorite thing. God has blessed me with the passion. I don't think that God has blessed me with inherent skill. I think God has blessed me with the passion to work hard and become very good at this. And it is a joy to make art that makes people think and makes people feel and wonder and believe. So to Henrietta's point, I think my heaven might look an awful lot like designing lights. Jeez. I've teared up doing this, but every time I've done it, but never quite this bad. So you're a special crowd today. So yeah.
For you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And-
It definitely comes as a pinnacle.
There's no lack of understanding about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
That why shouldn't you feel this way,
Yeah, thank you.
right?
So the final lines of this play, I'll end the bulk of my talk with the final line of the play. Because wonder will always get us there. Those of us who insist that there is much more beyond ourselves. And I do. And there's a reason. We measure it all in light. Questions? Yeah, please.
We have to use the mic.
Yeah, the question is, why are all of you here? Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. Let me clarify the question. Are you asking why did all of you decide to come to a lesson about one person's journey from theological and theatrical? Or are you asking why are we all here on Earth? Because I think that that's actually not far off from the topic of this talk. So yeah. I think my intent here, because there's a flip to that, which is why am I here? Why am I giving this talk to you? I think that it is potentially more connected to what's going to happen next week. So next week, we're going to gather in the DeWitt Main Theater, where we're going to examine my current research, the lighting design for The Hijabis, which is a interfaith play about focused on 3 Muslim women's experience. And we're going to examine lighting design in action and how it can tell a story. So the context of my faith and my theological approach and how my passion and my history and my calling impacts my creative works. And now you get to then come and see this show and see it in context. Speaking of which, see the show. It opens this weekend and runs this weekend and next weekend. you will gain things by seeing it and then coming to the talk next Wednesday, or you will gain things by coming to the talk next Wednesday and then seeing it the following weekend. There's not a right or wrong answer there. So why are all of you here? I mean, HASP offers a lot of different cool stuff. So I think some of the question is what do you gain? What do you choose to take from one person's story of their passion and research, I suppose. Is that an answer? Does that feel like something? Or yeah.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the video in that and then the picture of the performance of the other play. And that was a great example of how indirect lighting and direct lighting can tell two different stories and create completely different moods, even on the same stage.
Absolutely.
It reminds me so much of this time of the year, that in fall and in spring, so many scenes we're familiar with around us change dramatically because of the angle of the lighting of the early and later day.
Absolutely.
Not only in color, with the Purkinje effect and so forth, but also in shadows. And I think we see the same things differently, and it creates an introspection or melancholy just with lighting changes along.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think it would be a fascinating thing to take the same plays and make the lighting direct when it was indirect, and make it indirect when it was direct, and see what kind of story, how the story changes.
Yeah, lighting can completely change a scene. In some ways, just changing color, I can actually ruin costumes. I can change costumes colors drastically, and scenery as well. It's not kind. I try not to do that one. But also just narratively, I can, if a dance piece is intended to be joyous and I light it foreboding, it will read as foreboding. If there's a moment in the hijabis that we were rehearsing over the weekend, that there's a moment where a woman is taking off her hijab because she wants to disguise the fact that she is Muslim when she goes to work. And the playwright, who's been working with us as a cultural consultant, originally told us the director wanted, he thought this should be a very sacred moment, that it should look, sort of heavenly as she makes this choice. And the playwright said, no, it's not sacred. It is just something that some Muslim women choose to do in their day-to-day life. This needs to look somewhat mundane. And so I at first lit it somewhat mundane. And then the adjustment note was, it shouldn't look holy, but it does need to look risky. It needs to look dangerous. It needs to look, because she is choosing to hide her faith. She's making a hard choice. So it needs to look challenging. It doesn't need to look holy, but it should look challenging. And so then I changed from how much of her face was visible, changed the color, changed the where light was coming from. And now that moment has tension as she removes her hijab. Yeah.
How much, when, I'm sorry, I'm asking too many questions, but when the,
Two is not too many.
if you practice this, well, say you're an actor and you're practicing this as you described, and you go through everything at some point, you're just going through this without the lighting, emphasizing the scene you're trying to create. So is that difficult for the actors to then do it with the emphasis that the lighting creates? Then does it change they need to change the way they present their lines or their story? And when do you start having the actual performance lighting in the mix to help them get the feel of the whole deal?
In most academic and professional lighting situation or theatrical situations, you add your theatrical lighting about a week before opening, during those tech rehearsals that I mentioned. If I'm doing my job right, it hopefully doesn't require actors to change what they're doing much. Inherently, it will change often. because an actor is suddenly not having to manufacture everything. Think about if anybody's into film and films that are like filmed with a lot of special effects and it's all on green screen or blue screen, and somebody's, they're fighting a big monster, but there's just like a guy with a tennis ball in that moment. That actor's having to manufacture everything, manufacture lights, manufacture all of it, trying to imagine all of that. Film technology has changed where now sometimes there can be some sort of a moving image there, whether that's replaced later or not. So now that actor has one less thing to try to like conjure up out of nothing. So on stage, similarly, right? They've been in a rehearsal room where they had no lighting, no sound. They just had to emote fully from their own guts. That's good. Most of them can do it pretty well. We train them well. It's good. But as soon as we add in some of these additional elements, I have a costume on, it changes the way I move. I have sound playing, it changes the way I speak. I have lighting that is impacting the way that I move and speak and perform and how I feel. So yeah, I think that it does make a difference, but it's added relatively late in the process. Yes, question here.
Two things that your presentation makes me realize. One is just the fact that with what lighting can do, the stage can move you instantly from one time to a completely another scene. You don't have to have all these transitions or hall furniture around or anything like that. It's just instantly done. And then also present and past can be contrasted so that as soon as they see a present scene in one light and the light is different for another one, they know that's the signal for going back and forth. And that type of thing can be done to make the whole play. The other thing I was thinking of, though, is that your lighting has such capacity today to control everything about the light that you can easily go into circus time and way too much melodrama. And certainly knowing when to, the judgments you make are when to back off.
Absolutely.
And not do too much.
Simpler, bolder choices are often the right answer.
Terrific.
Yeah. I'm pleased about the fact that I got to that my graduate school studies included lighting some opera, because opera comes from a tradition of big, bold, simple choices. One light that is huge, that is as bright as the sun, that is over here, that is just streaming across. Okay, great. That's a very operatic choice. So in other contexts, perhaps I'm doing something that I don't have that gear. I don't have this one big mega light. I don't have a 4,000 watt lamp. Or excuse me. Yeah, but that's going to do whatever. But I've got something that will mimic that in some way. So yeah.
So what's ahead in the world of lighting technology? I mean, we've seen so much in the last 3 years, but in theater lighting,
I think stage lighting is always going to be changing incrementally, right? This light can render color slightly better, right? This LED light, for example, has taken over in a major way in terms of design, partially because it's energy efficient. But LED light is pretty bad at doing yellows. So there's always a new diode, a new thing, a new little thing, like internal to a specific light fixtures that are helpful for me to know, but like y'all won't notice it on the day-to-day, right? How much can we get a bigger, nicer light fixture that is more energy efficient, that is also cheaper? Most of these, a lot of really nice high-end lights, even just a simple light that turns on, turns off, and does a little bit of focus, those can be $700. So then to take those and can you get those a little cheaper? Can you, how much of your inventory of your existing gear can you change and swap? There's also exciting things with rendering, with how much can you design in virtual spaces beforehand. That's something that I need to get better at. Can I take the scenic design, which I've already got drafted in 3 dimensions? Can I take that scene design and put it in my light plot and prepare in advance? Yes, I already do that. Can I actually then render it as a 3-dimensional space and actually turn on every light and make the entire show virtually in advance? Yes, that technology does exist. It's good. It's not perfect. It takes a lot of work on the front end. Can we make it faster? Can we make it more practical? So there's things like that that will change. There is also the question, I mean, the thing that everybody's talking about is artificial intelligence, of when does my job start to experience the same challenges that visual art, like painting and drawing, are being impacted by, right? Where like right now I can go online and I can go to a AI generating image. I can go to Photoshop and say replace these people's face with a dog, and it will just generate the image of a dog because it knows what dogs look like, and it'll give me 3 choices and I can just choose between them. We're not at a place where I can say to the light board, here's a song, make something that has 2 different looks for the chorus and the verse, and the action is mostly downstage right, and it should include purple and blue. We're not at that point, but I suspect that that is something that a few years from now, and I don't know, the AI is moving fast. I don't know when that happens, but I think it's probably closer than I think it is, and that's a little scary, but we'll see. Yeah.
We've been talking about stage lighting
Mhm.
and I have always been super sensitive to light. Can you talk a little bit about lighting in our homes, in our businesses, in our coffee shops? I had a house built about 20 years ago and I said there will be no cans in the ceiling. They were absolutely shocked that I did not want any cans in the building, in the ceiling rather. I like lamps, I like sconces, I like chandeliers.
Yeah, great.
And so when I go to a coffee shop and they have that industrial feel of hard lighting coming from the ceiling, I am very uncomfortable.
Sure.
We had a presentation about coffee houses just last week.
Oh, go.
And I think lighting has a lot to do with your comfort in your workplace, in somebody's home, in a business, in a coffee shop, wherever you're going.
Yeah.
So could you
Sure, yeah.
talk a little bit about
We
that?
can talk a little bit about that. Absolutely. I was like, sound is a huge factor in those spaces as well. Drives we've got a farm to table menu, and all of the decor is exposed steel, and you can see the ductwork and the brick, and that's great. There's no soft surfaces, and now our voices, you and my conversation is quiet but is echoing over the whole room, and now I actually can't hear you. That drives me nuts. The different problem is the acoustics in these places, but let's talk about lighting because that's what we're actually doing. Yeah, the directional lighting that is, how do you put light on somebody's face because I want to be able to see, right, without having it be harsh and oppressive. One thing is actually, like, fluorescent lighting has gotten so much better. Everyone in this room remembers 30 years ago when these lights would have been so much more green and sickly, and you might even be able to get like a little flicker the whole time. And it's why everyone in the room had migraines in every office job that you had for your entire adult life. Yeah, for real. Or sodium vapor lighting that was like that weird sickly orange that was outdoors on every street light under a bridge and made everything, you're like, okay, cool. Am I descending into some sort of portal as I go under this bridge? No, it's just sodium vapor lighting. It's terrifying. These things that the technology has changed. Fluorescent lighting in this room is not the fluorescent lighting it was 30 years ago. The lights that are on me here, these are more directional. These are really focused. They're also really dim to the point where I actually think they're maybe too dim, but I think they probably look really good on camera, which is why they're there. So like you sort of have to think about what the intent of the lighting of the space is, what the audience for that space is. And I say audience because of my theatrical background, but also what is the audience when the lighting in my home is warm, except in the kitchen. In the kitchen, I want it colder because I want to see the true color of food. I don't want like a weird, slightly orange glow on everything, because then I'm like, oh yeah, that looks done. And then that's undercooked, right? Because it sort of had a rosy pit. Oh no, that's bright pink. Whoops. So my kitchen is more brighter, whiter lighting. My bathroom is brighter, whiter bathroom. But I've also got 2 switches in my bathroom because it came that way, but I've made one of them warm and one of them cool so that I can sort of have that refinement. It depends. I mean, interior lighting and architectural lighting are not my expertise, in that it's not a thing that I've explicitly studied, but it all extrapolates. So yeah, you still understand brightness versus color temperature versus directionality versus disbursement. It's all tricky, but yeah, it takes some intentionality in its approach.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the bigger and bolder and
Yeah.
operatic stages and so forth. There's so much more use of scrims, projected images on the back, perhaps the back wall.
Yeah.
And that would be in the scene design world.
Yeah,
but it's
sometimes.
lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be just silhouettes.
Sure, yeah.
Now it's moved. I've seen operas where, you're watching videos of the separate singers. So I'm just wondering how involved as a lighting designer is on those scrims.
Depends on the show, right? So, and a scrim is different than sort of a cyc. So a scrim is a surface that, when it is lit from the front, is opaque. And if you do not light the front and you light things behind it, it sort of disappears. It becomes translucent, which is, you get fun, cool magic tricks on stage with this. You also see it in like haunted houses and stuff. It's a cool thing that Disney uses when you go to like Disney. But you can also have like just a projection surface, which could be on the wall of the set, could be on a projection screen, could be on a cyc, which is just a big white, usually sort of sheet. This production that we're working on has a major projection element. It's a rear projection, meaning it's projected from behind the stage rather than in front of the stage. This is always a question when you do projection design. If you do projection design that comes from the front, you can end up with this, where I'm in the projection, right? I'm standing here and this projection is on my face. This can be used deliberately as lighting design. That becomes my light source. I can do that deliberately. The Broadway production of Beetlejuice is on tour right now and is in Grand Rapids, unless it left this weekend. I know it was here this last weekend. I think it's still there, but I'm not sure. The projection design in Beetlejuice is extremely specific. Every like edge of every piece of scenery has a bit of has projections on it, so it looks like the whole set comes to life and moves. It's projection design, but also it's lighting design, because if an actor stands in the middle of that, how much of that is on the actor? Is that on purpose? Should be. You're making a choice. So sometimes, meanwhile, rear projection, that's not going to get on the actor. So, and also it depends on where your projector is, right? Like, is your projector low? Is your projector high? Like, there's a lot of different changes and questions to be answered here. So for the hijabis, the projector is upstage. It is behind the scenery and it comes forward. So actors do not appear in the projection. So the projection is not a light source per se, but it becomes part of scenic design. So the scenic designer actually is the person who designed all of the projections, but then I, as the lighting and sound designer, actually programmed all of them into what makes them turn on and the timing of them. So it depends on the show. whatever it is, you should be making specific choices and informed with each other as opposed to in isolation. One over here and then one over here. Oh, did you hit a button? There you
The
go.
lighting is certainly a magical thing, and thank you very much for, I look forward to the continued presentation. When I see a live performance, and it just might be me because I'm a musician of sorts,
Sure, sure.
but if the sound, so many times in a live performance, the remote mics and so forth, there's some kind of foul up where the sound is not good.
Mhm.
And that to me is the thing that ruins the lighting the most is when the sound's not right.
Yeah.
And so many times these remote things, it sounds like a fixable problem. Obviously your set's working perfectly. But
Yeah.
people wandering around, especially in some performances that are, not maybe quite as professional in a high school performance or
Sure.
something like that. It boggles the mind of why they can't or don't get that right. And on the other side of things, in the very professional performances, especially those that have some musical aspect to them, I worry about I'm experiencing too much pre-recorded sound that they're lip syncing to. And I wonder if there's any kind of code of ethics that makes that not something you need to worry about.
So on the pre-recorded thing, I'll just briefly say that most instances where you're seeing that, you're what typically is happening is they are performing not to a track. They are performing live, and there is a track that is being played for tempo, and also for if something were to go wrong, like suddenly I cannot sing because of whatever, that then they can fade up that thing as a background, as an emergency background. But to the first point, when you come see the hijabis, we had one of the things that we as an industry are working on is accessibility, partially for assisted listening systems. So over the weekend, we put mics on our actors. Originally, we weren't going to have the actors mic'd through the sound system for this show because it's a straight play. It's not a musical. They're not trying to compete with a band. They're just trying to speak. And we want to train professional young actors who are able to speak loudly without the assistance of a microphone. So, but we've put a microphone on every actor. That's going to the assisted listening system, the loop system. So if you're somebody who uses that system, you have access to their mics. However, after going through tech rehearsal, after working with this and realizing that we have young actors and thinking about, conscientiously about audience experience, we've decided that we are going to pump the sound through the speakers. We still want to train good young actors to be loud enough, but we're conscious of audience experience. So we want to, so we are going to enhance those actors with mics. The person who is running those mics is a student, because this is an academic environment, right? So when you come see the show, either this weekend or next, there may be an audio bobble, just as there may be a line bobble, just as there may be a lighting bobble, just as there may be a projection bobble. Welcome to the glory of live performance, right? So, yeah. So the lighting, there may be a problem because of the equipment, but it's the person who's doing it. It's not the equipment. It's because a student is learning. That's a good thing. So when a student, particularly when you say, I'm going to ask for grace, particularly when you are at when you paid $70 to $150 to go see the Broadway tour Beetlejuice, and the sound is bad. Yeah, write an angry letter. That's fine, because that's a professional. When you come see a college production and they've got mics on and everybody's doing their darndest, and something isn't quite right, remember that that's a student who's learning, and that every time that you've heard a mistake, that's not a mistake. That is somebody learning. Thomas Edison, when he had like 120 different attempts to make a light bulb or something like this, I can't remember what the number is, but it's like 200 some. And somebody asked him, did you ever get frustrated? And he said, no, I didn't fail to make a light bulb 200 times. I discovered 200 different ways to not make a light bulb. And that means that you succeeded every single time. Every single time that I make a mistake, it's not that I made a mistake. I found another way to not do it. So now I can find the right way. So yeah, it's tricky.
Just really briefly, can you explain how AI has changed the lighting industry in theater?
Yeah, I think so far lighting has been a little bit immune to it thus far, to the AI changes. I think it's coming. I think it is more nuanced with more technology, with more bits and bops to try to put together, as opposed to on a screen in front of me, right? To just like, okay, make it look like this. On a screen, like in Photoshop, in one of these generative AI situations, I can say, generate an image that has lighting like this, and it'll make it. So sometimes where I have used it, very rarely and often without much success, has been to try to, if I have an image in my head that I can't find a reference for, because if you're the director and I'm trying to get you to understand what I'm going to put on stage, I can do that a few different ways. I can find reference photos. I can try to recreate it with a model or a flashlight or whatever and take a photo of it. Or I can actually like go take you into the theater and like make it happen. But that one's really time intensive. And if it's not going to work and you don't like it, then I've wasted a bunch of time. So I'd rather find a reference photo and say something like this. But if I can't find that image, then one of the ways I could do is go to AI and say, hey, give me an image of a person walking through a doorway with bright white light behind them. There's no light on their face, but and it's all blue. And like, maybe I get an image that looks like what I want. Maybe I don't. I've only had so much success with that, but that's one thing that has impacted my process. I think we're not yet to a place, I know we're not yet to a place where you could just say, make a show. I don't think, but I don't want that. But also there are things that would make it easier. Like if I could say without, I speak to a student who programs the board right now. I can also program it myself, but I'm teaching them how to use the light board. So I'm speaking and they're doing it. We could get to a point where I can say, I can just speak my commands and the light board will just do what I want. Some of those actually get into like clicking things that are no longer keystrokes. That's going to be the harder thing, but that's also going to be a thing that would be a lot faster. If I say, zoom it out, stop there, make it blue, more red in that, there it is, hold there, plus 20%, save. Right now, that a human being has to receive those commands. But we could get to a point where a computer could just do it. I think we're at time, right?
I just want to mention that I went to the ballet on Sunday and it was so fabulous, the symphony, and it was called the Symphony of Movement. And I was so much more aware of the lighting because of hearing you one time before. Another thing, because of many photography classes that I've taken, it's just opened my world to notice all the lighting changes and in art and physically in nature. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Along those lines, let me give you one last thing. If you've enjoyed this at all and you'd like to spend more time with me, first of all, come back next week as seen on the slides right now, but also Hope College's global travel program is a thing that has restarted post-COVID, where they, you don't have to be a HASS member, you don't have to be a Hope College graduate, you don't have to be connected with college at all. It's for alumni and friends of Hope College. There are these trips that go across all around the world, and I'm leading this one to Scotland next summer. So registration is happening now. If you search Hope College Scotland, it'll pop right up, or Hope College Global Travel Scotland, it'll pop right up. But if you want to spend 10 days bumming around we're starting in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and so that's why I'm there, is because we're going to see some theater, and you can go to whatever shows you want. You can go to stand-up, you can go to theater, you can go to art, more performance art, and then you'll come back to me and say, Eric, what the heck did I just watch? And I'll help you understand it. And maybe we'll go to stuff together or whatever. And then the sort of second half of the trip is up through the Scottish Highlands to see some castles and some history and some iconic locations and blocks and, Scotland. I think we're going to a distillery. Should be fun. But yeah, there's a bit of a price tag associated with it, but it's a pretty phenomenal trip. So if that intrigues you at all, and you've thought that I was at least mildly entertaining, and would like to chat with me more, I'm happy to talk with you more about this, but get some information and get registered.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week in the theater.
Yeah, see you there.